Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Thrilled, happy to be back in the studio. Had a couple of great days in Boston at the American Federation of Teachers convention. Great time meeting teachers from across the country. Some 3,000 educators, paraprofessionals, nurses, aides, all those folks coming together to talk about, hey, how are you going to move your union forward? How are you going to help children? How are you going to help protect the most vulnerable? It's a pretty incredible event. Good on them. I have hope for big things coming out of that. But, you know, when you go into those environments, it's always chaotic. It's always, well, it's always fun. And we had a blast, and I want to thank Randy Weingarten, president of the American Federation of Teachers, for the invitation and having us there. It was a great event. Let's start off with the big story today. Evidently, big report coming out about the Uvalde shooting. And in talking with the teachers and people who work in schools, and look at people who work in places where people congregate, this is one of the big issues. How do we keep people safe? How are we going to ensure public safety? Uvalde kept coming up because of the failures of the police. We find out today from this report, there were nearly 400 police officers at that elementary school in Uvalde. 400 to confront the one gunman with an AR-15. One. And what they found that law enforcement failed to adhere to their active shooting training. They failed to prioritize the safety of saving innocent lives, those children, because they also said, hey, had they acted sooner, lives would have been saved. But they put their own safety over that of those kids. And you go, yeah, that's for the vast majority of people, that's human nature. But in this environment where you've taken this active shooter training, and you should have a plan in all of these scenarios, because you do these school scenarios. 77 minutes, way unforgivable. I mean, I'm not even going to say too long. Unforgivable. And the reality is this is where the right has the upper hand in arguing. If those teachers would have had a gun, to a person, every teacher I spoke to, and I did not find one who said, I think I would take on someone with an AR-15. They all said the same thing. Someone with a little pea shooter is not going to take on someone with a weapon of war. Look at all those 400 police officers in full gear with the proper gear to be able to take this on. This is the training. 400 of them, armed, body armor, all the gear necessary, and still fail. You think the elementary school teacher is gonna do that? The answer is no. Now, while we were at the convention, they held a panel with gun rights activists. We did have an opportunity to sit down with Sarah Lerner from Teachers Unify to talk about her organization and her experience in what for her was one of those situations. She's a high school teacher at the Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, and why she started her organization and what the thoughts were. But they had a panel where they talked about, hey, what are the ways forward, and what President Biden just signed is a half step towards getting to where we need to be. And look, it's what you need to do. I'll tell you, teachers are on edge. Some of them are, putting on the proud face. We just have to muster forward. But this is one of those things that no kid should have to worry about. And I go back to my own years in school. We were worried about Russians dropping bombs on us. And look, we kind of knew it was never going to happen because it hadn't happened yet. Had This is one of those things where had you seen it happen somewhere else, we'd have taken those drills a whole lot more seriously, and they would have been a whole lot more traumatic. But imagine, going to school every day and going, hey, could today be that day? And then add on all of that other pressure and all that other stress. All because we don't want to take on what the real problems are. But this report, fairly damning. And we'll see what happens. We'll see what comes out of this. Will there be changes? I don't know. Love to hear your thoughts, though. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Great to be back in the studios. As I said, we were at the convention, and, they brought in some of the organizers from the Amazon Labor Union, some organizers from the Starbucks campaigns. And look, there's some great victories on the union front happening as we speak. And they're winning NLRB elections. Now, these haven't, so far, none of this has turned into union contracts. I'm told they're in the works. I'm told they're pushing, they're fighting. Now is not the time to go, hey, we won, and it's over. Now is the time to be standing up and fighting even more. But one of the women organizers for the Starbucks campaign, this Kayla Clay, she said something that just grabbed my attention. And it was this, that she said, up until a year ago, she didn't even know what a labor union was. And this is an education problem. This is a problem of generations not talking about what was fought for: the 8-hour day, weekends, vacation, holidays, you name it. Labor unions fought for it. And, this is one of those moments. I don't see this as a negative. 10 years ago, I would have probably said something negative, but this is an educational opportunity. This is an opportunity to go, hey, we got a chance to educate, to engage, to get people to stand up and say, now is the right time. Now is the time that we step forward, speak out, and fight for more. Let's go to the phone lines. We've got John from Los Angeles on line one. John, how are we doing tonight?
Doing okay. Thank you, Rick.
What's on your mind, brother?
Well, the Uvalde police really let down those kids, and they let down the parents, and they let down everybody else. I've heard that it's possible that they're in what's called a culture of complacency. I just heard it, but elsewhere. But it's that culture of complacency, if that's what it really is, that made them stand back and stand down. It's that culture of complacency that it permeates this whole system that we live in, and that's what pisses me off, and maybe that's what angers a lot of people in this country, and they feel let down. Okay.
Yeah, I feel let down. Look, we put a lot of faith in our police department. We give them a lot of power, and in these moments, they're supposed to be the ones who are rushing in, not standing in the hallway putting on hand sanitizer.
Well, I'm not just talking about the police. They've got so many rituals and rules and chains of command and things that probably tie themselves into Keystone Cops. I don't know, but I'm not one of them. I'm not over there, and I'm not a big shot in this country either. I'm just merely a citizen. But I personally would not be let off the hook if I did something like that myself. But since I'm not a part of a group that exists in a culture of complacency, I feel I have the right to feel let down.
Not with you. Look, and you're not nobody. You're a citizen, and that's an important position in this country.
Well, a lot of people feel that since I'm not as privy to the goings on of things, that maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, and a lot of people don't. And I'm not some Marjorie Taylor Greene, you big mouth, but I don't think. But people in power need to show the right stuff for the rest of us to follow. Otherwise, it's all going to fall down too. The role models in this country are just so complacent, it's pathetic. They're all Donald Trump.
No, I'm with you, John. And look, this is one of those moments that we should all be angry. We should all be infuriated because this isn't a political issue. This isn't right, left.
Oh, yes, it is.
No,
it is all political.
See, I don't see this as a political issue. I see this as this is a failure of that department to do what they were trained to do. No, I'm sorry. There's just no justification for what they did. I don't care about hierarchy. I don't care about Keystone Cops. No justification.
It's not formally political, sir, but when people have to deal with each other, that's politics. Okay, in my opinion, it's a very generalized politics, but no, it is political if you look at it in a very diluted, generalized form. The ones in power, the authorities, have got to re-examine. There's got to be a re-examination.
There's got to be something. There's got to be some house cleaning there as well. But John, I appreciate the thoughts, man. Thanks so much.
You're welcome, sir.
Good stuff. Let's go to Alice on line 3. Alice, what's on your mind tonight?
Well, the only thing I have to say is only in Texas. I mean, seriously, almost 400. 376, to be precise, according to WAPO. You have that many law enforcement officers, and nobody does anything. Then you have, Ken Paxton suing the government because it's their right to let women die. And I'm just going, only in Texas, no power grid.
Yeah.
They're all insane.
No, I'm with you, Alice. Appreciate it.
Have a good one.
Thanks so much. No, I mean, see, here's my problem with this whole thing. I don't know how you stand in that hallway. I don't know how you stand there and you hear what was going on and not have even the appearance of more urgency. I just don't know how you do it. I just don't know how you do that and not have that appearance of urgency, that appearance that something has to get done. I don't know how you do it. Let's go to Kurt on line 2, calling from Akron. Kurt, what's on your mind, brother? How are you?
Hey, not too bad, Rick. And you know what? Nice to talk to a fellow Northeast Ohioan.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Good to hear from you, brother.
Yeah. Hey, the reason I'm calling is first of all, that Uvalde thing. Oh gosh, I can't even find the words for that. But the reason I was calling was, I have to agree with you about the whole idea of the lack of education of these kids in the schools. I mean, what is it? Ever since Bill Bennett was our education secretary under Ronald Reagan, we basically had overall 2.5 generations of civically ignorant people in this country.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right, and not just it's the fight over what they continue to push. I love hearing my right-wing friends say, "Oh, you just want to indoctrinate our children with," and you go, it's that kind of projection that they do. They're accusing me of things that they've already done and are doing by stripping civics out of school, by taking labor education out of school, by taking any kind of working class consciousness out of school.
Well, that's like today. I was looking at Facebook and I saw that a school board member from my high school that I went to high school in down in Uniontown, Ohio, had passed away over the weekend. So now they're taking applications for the school board. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I hope they don't get a Trumpy who will follow this whole don't teach civics kind of stuff, or, indoctrinate the kids and keep them stupid and, all this other stuff. And I'm thinking, oh man, this is going to be bad if this happens. But hey, I'm the one who actually emailed you last Thursday. And I'll tell you what, basically a lot of the stuff I learned, I had to self-teach myself, plus going to college at Kent State helped too. But, but it's just amazing. And in the process of doing a 1964 campaign history, audio history, and I actually added some of that Freedom Summer in there because that was a major issue with the civil rights movement. And I'm sitting there listening to this stuff, and I'm thinking, this is stuff people need to listen to. This is stuff people need to know, because what else is going to happen in the future if we have people who, gosh, just think if we lose people's rights to vote in this country with that whole Supreme Court decision.
The Moore case from North Carolina, yeah.
Right, and are we going to have quote-unquote civil rights workers registering people to vote anywhere in this country, suffering the same fate as those civil rights workers down in Mississippi? I mean, kids aren't going to know this because, oh my gosh, that's critical race theory.
No, in fact, we just had a listener call in the other day and say, look, I went through school here locally where I live, and she learned nothing about the civil rights era, didn't learn about Selma, didn't learn about any of the things about slavery. She knew nothing, and was just distraught as she was learning this stuff that, hey, I never knew any of this stuff. And the sad reality is a lot of folks unfortunately have no idea of what our history is. So when you start presenting what actual history is, now it seems like an agenda, and that's a problem where we are.
And to listen to Lyndon Johnson behind the scenes talking to J. Edgar Hoover, Bobby Kennedy, Senator Eastman, all these people down in the South and in the government at that time, the parents of those 3 young men who were killed. Oh my gosh, that stuff makes your bones shake. I swear to gosh, you get a chill down your spine listening to that stuff.
Yeah, back in 2015
we need to know.
Back in 2015 we did a civil rights tour where we went, all through the southern U.S., and wherever they treated black people poorly, there's now an institute, there's a museum, there's a tourist trap to get you in there to spend your money to go, hey, look how bad we were to people. And some of the places were, really, difficult to go through. I mean, the images that they showed, in fact, the curator would come to me and say, you've got kids with you. Here, we're going to take the kids off into a different section while you go through this, because it's some pretty ugly, pretty nasty stuff. And thank goodness for the curator for doing that.
My dad would have made us go through the pretty ugly stuff just to make sure that
my kids were, they were small at the time. That's now, but them being 13 and 16, yeah, now I would take them through. But when you're talking 5 and 7, no, we're not going to do that.
Right. And I'll tell you what, though, if you really want to get chilled and know what's going on, Kent State actually has a walking tour of the events leading up to the shooting on May 4th, 1970, through the May 4th Visitor Center.
Yeah, I've been on the campus. In fact, I've been thrown off the campus.
I've lived on the campus myself for a year and a half. So yeah. In fact, I know some people here in the Northeast Ohio area who were actually there, and one of them was actually a friend of Sandy Scheuer's.
We had interviewed one of the victims' sisters a couple of years ago, and the story that she tells is pretty pretty horrific. And
was that Laurel Krause?
Yeah. And
she's pretty active on that.
Yeah, no, but again, this is stuff that people need to know, and because look, history does repeat itself, and that's why I give you credit for doing the work that you do, because it's important.
Well, thank you, Rick, and I really enjoy your show. And again, a long-time listener, first-time caller.
Appreciate it, Kurt. Call again real soon.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Good stuff. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Going to take a quick break. Right back on the other side. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs. in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, time's running out on the climate change front, and thank you, Joe Manchin, for looseying the Democratic Party once again, and looseying, Joe Biden's agenda. Because look, there's a short window left from what we're being told to do something on climate change, so that our children's children don't look back at us and hate us as they literally fry. Interesting story coming out of Sky News today over in the UK. They are citing a military source that's saying that the UK Royal Air Force, they're grounded. Grounded Air Force. And again, I don't know how you have an Air Force when you can't get the little birds off the ground. Turns out it's the largest Air Force base. It's the largest base where the little birds take off from. Shut down because the runway has melted. Runway's melted. They can't take off. Runway melted because Europe's going through a major heat wave, and what they're calling an unprecedented heat wave throughout France and the UK, going to top national temperature records. I guess easily they're saying potentially killing several thousand is what they're also saying. They're saying that scorching heat is moving north into more vulnerable regions after basically just decimating Spain and Portugal. So, hey, fun, especially for the poorer countries, the people who can't afford to be in air-conditioned or in temperature-controlled areas. Yeah, good fun for the future. And again, as we do nothing, as we continue to do nothing, because we're good at doing nothing, you have people like Mitch McConnell, you have people like Rand Paul who are, doing their thing. Rand Paul is all upset that Mitch McConnell's made a deal or agreed to some deal with Biden over this anti-abortion judge that Biden is now pulling the nomination front. Because if you remember, Biden and McConnell had made some kind of a deal to Biden would get what he wanted, McConnell would get his judge because McConnell's all about the courts. Evidently, Biden got a little bit too much heat from us. Rightfully so, what we should be doing. Now, Mitch, let's not forget, Mitch McConnell is holding up the country on the CHIPS bill. The CHIPS bill that would help us, in our vital infrastructural needs. All those cute little chips that go into our smart things, like the bombs that we need, supposedly, and all of our phones and all of the things that make our cars run. Evidently, we can't have that CHIPS bill until Mitch McConnell is certain, absolutely certain, that drug prices are not going to go down because, hey, pharmaceutical folks want to make sure that their profits are well taken care of. So if Mitch McConnell doesn't get his high drug prices, we don't get chips, and inflation keeps where it's at because we don't get the productive capacity to make things here at home. Yeah, welcome to America, where Mitch McConnell, who's still in the minority, still controls things. Thanks, Joe Manchin. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1969. That was the day hospital workers in Charleston, South Carolina, won union recognition. The 113-day strike reflected all the broader social issues of the day. Led primarily by black women, the strike at the medical college, Charleston County, and several other hospitals intersected civil rights and racial and gender discrimination on the job. Jewel Charmaine Debnam notes that women like Local 1199B President Mary Moultrie, Naomi Watts, and others were essential to the strike, not only as daily participants on the picket line, but also as leaders of the local movement establishment. For months, strikers marched, walked picket lines, clashed with police, and held vigils demanding their right to organize. They defied injunctions and endured hundreds of arrests, nightly curfews, and confrontations with state National Guard. Governor McNair and the hospital boards had initially refused to concede to the workers' demands for union recognition. They claimed workers paid with public funds could not engage in collective bargaining. But the women were steadfast. They pointed to the wage disparities between black and white workers and between male and female workers. They also protested the blatant disrespect and discrimination meted out daily by management. Local longshoremen stood in solidarity with the strikers and threatened a walkout in support if their demands were not met. Coretta Scott King and many other civil rights leaders also played a supportive role. Finally, the union won reinstatement of fired workers, which had touched off the strike. They also won a solid grievance procedure, a minimum wage, and access to a credit union. Victory would be short-lived, however, when the state almost immediately refused to hold up its end of the agreement.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
How about Ron DeSantis? The Florida governor is the new darling of the right-wing media, funders, and other establishment powers who are pushing him to be your next president. Ron DeSantis is the new Republican Party, gushed one arch-conservative media maven. That's odd, since what characterizes Ron's tenure and is causing a collective swoon for him within the rightist hierarchy is his big government authoritarianism. Only recently, these same so-called conservatives said such use of government power was evil. But here comes DeSantis, who puts the bull in bullying, bellowing culture war hooey, demonizing immigrants, fabricating claims of voter fraud, promoting COVID lives, and so forth. Then he imperiously asserts government power to bully local communities, workers, the poor, Florida's environment, truth, fairness, honesty, and democracy. Consider one of his recent maneuvers to overturn the people's democratic will. Like most other Republican-run states, DeSantis' Florida keeps trying to block African Americans from the polls. In 2018, however, Floridians themselves rebuked the suppressors by approving a ballot measure to expand the electorate. A whopping 65% said yes to eliminating a vindictive lifelong ban on voting by ex-felons, people who had served their time. This long overdue measure of simple justice re-enfranchised about 1.4 million former felons. But wait, DeSantis had old Jim Crow up his sleeve. In 2019, he rammed a technical gotcha into state law, preventing former felons from voting until they pay in full all court fines. These fines can run thousands of dollars, so DeSantis' new law created a partisan poll tax to price a big percentage of these voters out of Democratic participation. This is Jim Hightower saying, remember, he's the new Republican Party.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So looking forward to the... I'm guessing this is the finale of the January 6th committee. Maybe there might be possibly another. Who knows? Who really knows? There could be a sequel. For all we know, could be a sequel. But Thursday, there's a big one, prime time. This could be the explosive one. And here on the program, we will be airing live whatever it is that is going to happen on that day. So we're going to make sure that we do that. We will start early on our webcast and run right into our normally scheduled radio time, but this gonna be a big day, I think. This Matthew Pottinger, a former National Security Council member under the former guy, set to testify. This should be interesting. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the big prime time event, I've asked our good friend Will Bunch to come talk with us. Will is a national columnist over at the Philadelphia Inquirer. He's got a new book coming out, so you're going to want to look forward to this after the ivory tower falls. Looking forward to taking a look at that and getting a copy of it for myself. Maybe Will will even scratch his name somewhere on it. Will, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey Rick, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So let's go to this Thursday big to do. Thoughts?
It's prime time. They got to go big. This committee, they've been very media savvy. I particularly think back on the whole Cassidy Hutchinson thing, because the way they handled that by not announcing it to the last minute and making her this kind of secret witness. They really, they're really good at drumming up public interest in these hearings and suspense and, and I'm all for it. I've been covering politics. I started working as a full-time journalist in 1981, the first year of Ronald Reagan's presidency. So I've seen 40 years of how the Republicans have turned politics into a show.
And this is why I think this is all Liz Cheney. I don't think any Democrats have any part of this show, of this presentation. I think it's all her. I think it's the right-wing media playbook that she's pulled out and say, "Oh, dummies, over here, this is how we do it." And I think they've done it masterfully.
I think so too. The only one concern, and I'm not the first person to raise this with Liz Cheney, is, her single-minded focus is on bringing down Donald Trump, which is great, right? We all want to bring down Donald Trump, but there are other issues out there. And so, for example, the committee has not been particularly good at going after the whole Clarence Thomas, Ginny Thomas angle.
And they haven't gone after the money. The first thing I said, I want to know who funded all of this. I want the billionaires. I want the people who are behind all of these 3% groups, these Proud Boy groups. I want the money. Follow the money. And you're right. Her focus is taking out Trump and saving the Republican Party.
Yeah, right. So there's other things that would look bad for the Republican Party that aren't directly bringing down Trump. And the Clarence Thomas thing, I think, is exhibit, and the Ginny Thomas thing is exhibit A. And so, but you got to take the good with the bad. On the whole, I think it's great that we've had this committee. I think a lot of it was kind of luck in a way, but I think the Kevin McCarthy, he's got to be one of the worst leaders out there, kind of botched it from his end and kind of teed it up. It's not a traditional hearing. You can imagine an alternative universe where there was a traditional hearing where there were adversarial Republicans trying to take down these witnesses and cross-examining them. It would have been a totally different type thing. What we're getting is a show, but it's a show that's revealing the truth, in my opinion.
Well, no, and this is where you're right. This is where they made a huge tactical error from the beginning to sit this out. I would have never allowed this to go forward without me putting someone on there to question everything.
Exactly. And I think this is, the evidence I've seen, it's easy to get cynical and say, oh, nothing, Donald Trump is so Teflon at this point that nothing's going to bring him down. But I'm seeing some evidence out there that these hearings are making a dent with, the small number of people that can be peeled away from Trump.
No. In fact, Axios had a report today that they came out with that said in Wisconsin they did a focus group where 10 of 14 Wisconsin swing voters said that they believed Trump should be tried and prosecuted for what happened on January 6th. And in Arizona they did another focus group where 10 of the 13 said that they believed that he should be prosecuted. So those numbers are moving in a direction where the more that's coming out, the more we're seeing presented, the more the very best people. Now, what's interesting is everyone who's testified, we're Republicans, we're Trump people, we're the very best people. These aren't hippie liberals. This isn't Eric Swalwell grandstanding. These are people who are around Trump saying this stuff. Republicans are coming around. Swing voters, independents are kind of going that way.
Yeah. Of course, it could be a case of be careful of what you wish for, right? This could be teeing things up for Ron DeSantis, who could be a smarter, more dangerous version of Trump. So I'm a little, I'm a little worried about that. But
no, but I'm worried about it too, Will. But the reality is look, at some point when you do something wrong, you've got to be held accountable for it. This is one of those things. To me, this isn't right, left. This isn't political to me. This is, you broke the law. This is not how a leader on any side should ever be allowed to act. And if they ever do, they have to be held accountable. This isn't right, left. This isn't Democrat, Republican. This isn't liberal, conservative. This is none of that. Yeah. This guy tried to overthrow our government.
which is why the reports that we keep getting out of the Justice Department really bother me to some extent. These reports of how Justice Department prosecutors, for example, seem to be surprised by Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony, that they were taken aback, that they really, to me, even before January 6th, I knew January 6th was going to be bad because you could see what Trump was doing. I wrote a column in late November of 2020 after Trump replaced the top people at the Department of Defense, and the headline of my column was, "Is Trump planning a coup or what?" You could see him doing this in real time, and when you woke up on January 7th, it was clear that we had just gone through an attempted coup and that this was being directed in some, we didn't know all the details, obviously, but clearly this was being directed in some fashion by Donald Trump. And so the fact that, 18 months later, the Justice Department is finally having some light bulbs going off over its head, it's concerning. It's concerning because we're running out of time. Trump is now racing to declare his candidacy for 2024. And, just before I came on your show, Rick, Rachel Maddow had a report and obtained and reported, I think for the first time, on a letter that Merrick Garland sent out to Justice Department staff back in May, giving them guidance. And he basically endorsed the most extreme Bill Barr, Trump's Attorney General guidance from 2020 about the appearance of not interfering in elections. And, of course, we all understand on some level there's not interfering in elections absolutely has to be a consideration and has to be thought about every time. But in this case, you have to think about the biggest picture. Can somebody plot to block the peaceful transfer of power in the United States and get away with it? That's the fundamental question here. And for me, it should be a no-brainer for Merrick Garland and his team. And I'm just very concerned. I do think at this point, and because of the good job that the January 6th committee has done in both getting the facts out there and doing it in a way that, as we just discussed, clearly I think has affected public opinion to some degree.
No, it's been compelling. It's been bombshell after bombshell after bombshell of.
So the facts are out there. Public opinion is come around very strongly to the side of doing something. But now the question is, did they wait too long? Is it too late? I'm very concerned because I really think the future of this country depends on, showing that Donald Trump was not above the law. And we don't know how that's going to play out, but I'm very nervous about how it's going to play out.
Yeah, I'm with you, but I'm still guardedly optimistic. Knowing Garland's background, that very silent. I haven't seen that many leaks coming out of the Department of Justice. There's still the part of me that goes, once this concludes and everything's out in the open, then we may see something. I'm still guardedly hopeful. Not wouldn't put any money on it. Not going that far.
Yeah, there's no reason to think that it definitely won't happen.
Yeah.
Like I said, these reports about what their mindset is over there and just how far along they've gotten in the process, given that it's been a year and a half.
Yeah, we got to get something.
I want to be optimistic, but with concerns.
There you go. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Will Bunch. Will's a national columnist over at the Philadelphia Inquirer. He's got a new book coming out, After the Ivory Tower Falls. We'll get links out on social media on how you can get that. So tell me a little bit about the book. What are we getting? It's coming out the end of August?
August 2nd, with the second day of August. So we're only looking at 2 weeks from tomorrow. We actually moved the publication up because of some cool promotional stuff that I can't talk about yet, but that's going to be happening in early August. So it's coming out very soon, and I think the timing couldn't be better because, if you follow the news, there are a couple things going on right now. One, in the last year or two, I think people have really come to understand just how outrageous the college debt crisis in this country is. $1.75 trillion, more than credit card debt, more than other debts. And, we just kind of allowed this to sneak up on us. And so between now and the end of August, President Biden's going to have to decide whether he's going to keep a promise that he made during the 2020 campaign to eliminate at least $10,000, which will help. It won't go all the way for a lot of people, but it will help certainly. Or people like Elizabeth Warren, who I interviewed a couple months ago, are urging him to do much more than that. Because right now, because of the pandemic, people have had this 2-year holiday from making these debt payments, and it's helped. It's helped young people get back on their feet. And if people have to start making these massive debt payments again on September 1st, it's going to be devastating for the economy. It's going to be devastating for our young, and frankly, even though it's not the most important thing, it'll be devastating for the Democratic Party going into the midterms, because young voters will be discouraged. Another thing in the news, though, is more and more people are deciding just not to go to college. Enrollment is dropping, and because people are really questioning whether it's worth it to get a college degree. And so in my book, basically, for the last 15 years as a political writer, I've been watching this college non-college divide become the defining thing in American politics. Where you've got this situation now in 2022 where the Democratic Party is heavily the party of college-educated people, regardless of race, but including white people. On the Republican side, it's been happening since Reagan to some degree, but especially, in the Trump years, you've seen the Republican Party become increasingly the party of the white working class, which is, very, very painful for both of us, right? To see how this has happened, but it has happened. There's growing concerns, and I debate people about this on Twitter sometimes, but I think the concerns they can be overblown sometimes, but I think there's a lot of legitimacy to this idea that we're seeing non-white working class people migrate to the Republican Party. I think that's certainly been true in some areas of the Latino community. We've seen it happen in South Texas. Florida, you've always had that Cuban community, but in South Texas, you've seen voters going to the Republican Party. The Republicans just won a big special election in a heavily Hispanic district in South Texas. Asians have been migrating to the Republican Party. Some black male voters, not a huge number, but I think I hate to say this, but I think Trump's misogyny was appealing to some men, including some black men, and some other non-white men. Anyway, in my book, I try to explain, well, why would this happen? Why would one party, the Democrats, become the party of college-educated folks, and why would Republicans become the party of the not college-educated people? And so I looked at the history of college since World War II, and so much of this has to do with our fundamental idea. Is college and higher education and people learning and getting skills after age 18, is that a public responsibility? Is that a public good? Or do we put the onus on individuals at a great cost that they're going to have to work much of their lives to pay back? And if you go back to 1944, we had the GI Bill, was this kind of unlikely experiment in what would happen if we gave middle-class people a free opportunity to go to college, particularly middle-class people who were veterans, who'd fought in World War II, and they did great. They were the best students these colleges had ever seen, and not surprisingly, their kids wanted to go to college. And so you saw this era in the 50s and 60s and maybe even into the early 70s of very low tuition to go to a public university. Some places like California, New York City, CUNY were free, no tuition at all. Enrollment skyrocketed. You had new dorms, new professors. It was a boom. And, and the other thing was the idea that you went to college to become a better person, to learn, that you would be a better citizen if you got a liberal general education.
Right.
And, we really wanted to try that as a country. We did try it. And what happened to one degree is, it almost kind of worked too well, right? Because all these young people getting this liberal education and becoming boosters for democracy started to see that there was a lot of hypocrisy here in the United States. There was hypocrisy around, racial apartheid and segregation in the South. There was massive hypocrisy around the Vietnam War. You started to see people protest on these campuses, and that caused a backlash. You had people like Ronald Reagan running for governor, basically using campus protests and these dirty, smelly hippies as kind of the cudgel to get elected, and promising to end free tuition. And that's what happened. That became the philosophy of the conservative movement, that college should be privatized, that,
all education they believe should be privatized.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting. It started with college because that's where the protests were, and that's where you had less of established tradition. It's interesting to see in the last couple of years, they're really moving that into K through 12. One thing, and I'm getting a little bit maybe ahead in the story, but one thing that's really fascinating that I looked into researching the book is, so the George Floyd protests of 2020, people don't realize to what extent that was really a revolt of the college educated. Some academic people did studies of who were marching at these George Floyd protest marches. And it was staggering the degree to which people were college educated. I think it was about 80% at some of these protest marches were people with college degrees. And, the white college educated, that you had a much larger white component in these protest marches than before, but also even among African Americans, actually a majority of the people who marched were college educated. And I think on the right, people made the connection between the fact that better educated people are the biggest boosters for diversity, are the biggest people fighting for equity. The people who are out there fighting to end systemic racism, the people out there fighting to undo police brutality, are people who are better educated. And
so the answer that they come to is destroy education. I got it.
Yeah,
that's where
I hate to be that simplistic, but that's what you're seeing. That's Ron DeSantis' driving force, and it started with banning CRT, but it keeps going farther. And if this Doug Mastriano is elected governor here in Pennsylvania, he wants to cut the taxpayer contribution for public schools in half. He wants to take it from $18,000 a year per people to $9,000 a year, the level of Mississippi.
Yeah, no, I say it all the time. If he wins, we're immediately Alabama, Mississippi, the worst of both worlds.
Yeah, and he's extreme, but I think that's the growing attitude out there, that give people money so they can send their kids to religious schools or so they can homeschool them, and the public schools can fight for themselves with hardly any money. I mean, you're talking Hunger Games type stuff.
No, I've been saying this stuff for years, Will. This is not news to my audience. This is stuff that I've been warning people for years that this is coming. But the book, After the Ivory Tower Falls, we'll get links out on social media. You can check it out. You got to come back and give us more on this book when it's released, and we can do the right and proper promotion of it.
Yeah, Rick. No, first week in August. Bring me back, and we'll get it going.
Good stuff. Will, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff, my friend.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Good stuff. Our good friend Will Bunch. Make sure you check out the work that he does there at the Philly Inquirer. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
This story about the 10-year-old girl from Ohio who had to go to Indiana to get an abortion because she was raped by a 27-year-old. And to have Republicans say, no, that didn't happen. There's no such thing. There's no rapist. Any pregnant 10-year-old, it was rape. There's no consent there. No matter what James Langford believes. Sorry, Senator, no 13-year-old can consent either. But here, the doctor who performed the procedure, evidently being threatened, I guess threatened to be kidnapped, all kinds of horrible stuff. The kind of horrible that you would expect from our right-wing loons. Remember, these are the people who are blowing up clinics. These are the people who were killing doctors and providers in the past. And the thing is how did they find out who the doctor was? What about the privacy of the patient and the doctor? Yeah, no such thing in con land. But evidently, OBGYN doctors across the country are raising money. They've raised, I guess, close to $100,000 for this doctor. Because seriously now, she is going to need around-the-clock security. She's going to need a security detail. She is going to need... This is where we live, folks. This is the world that the cons have taken us to. Remember, these are the people who are well-armed. Remember this. These are we got to have guns everywhere so we can protect the babies. This woman, her life is in danger. All because she had the unmitigated gall to do her job. 10-year-old child. 10. And yet the Republicans are going to tell you, no, it's an opportunity. The 10-year-old could have an opportunity to bring a life into this world. Never mind the fact, and this is one of the things that my 13-year-old daughter brought up to me as we were discussing this. Do you think the 10-year-old would make it through the process? Do you think that it would kill the 10-year-old? And I don't know. I'm sure smarter people than me would figure this out, and I'm sure that this doctor who was under attack probably thought better of it. We live in really, really bizarre times. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any of the program, make sure you download the podcast wherever you get your favorite podcasts. We are there, so where you get yours, you'll find ours. Or just go to thericksmithshow.com. It's all there.
We do see water shortage, we see severe agricultural impacts, we see very severe ecosystem impacts with the risk of extinction of native species and so on.
Spain and Portugal hit with driest climate in more than 1,000 years. Yes, summers are getting hotter, longer, and more dangerous in the United States. Plus,
this is extremely bad news.
Deforestation in the Amazon rainforest hits new all-time record high.
All of that extremely bad news and maybe even worse, all straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Wait, what? The Supreme Court ruled that the Environmental Protection Agency does not have the authority to protect the environment? So what is their job now? Just going to look at the environment and be like, oh, shit! a good day at work. You guys want to get some drinks?
That's about it.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM.